Good evening. It is so wonderful to have you back here. This week's episode is some stories narrated about horror stories while traveling. Now, please be careful while traveling. Obviously, you never know what's going to happen, what type of people are going to be out there. So stay safe. And with that said, grab yourself a snack, sit back and relax, and hope that tonight will not be your last.
My grandparents' job required them to travel across the United States in a large truck with a trailer. I traveled with them and was homeschooled on the road. We lived in hotels, ate at fast food restaurants, diners, and truck stops. While most adults would love to travel for free and see beautiful locations like California, Nevada, Colorado, Texas, I was a young girl and wanted to stay back home with my friends and family. But of course, it wasn't my decision. What my parents would understand is that, as a developing child, I would be in many dangerous situations due to being in unfamiliar cities with sketchy characters. The first story happened in Nevada at 12 years old. After 12 hours on the road, my grandparents and I finally arrived to Las Vegas for the first of our 5-night stay. In order to save money to account for the last-minute guest, me, of course, we stayed at a cheap hotel on the not-so-best part of a town a little outside of the city. It was cheaper to stay there, but the hotel had complimentary breakfast, a family-friendly guarantee, but most importantly, a pool. I had been traveling with them for not even 2 weeks, and what would happen next would set the tone for the next year I spent on the road. My new guardians and I were down at the pool, catching rays and cooling down under the 117-degree heat. I was excited to go swim and tan because it was summer, and it was a break from being lectured and punished for my bad behavior, which resulted in me being sent to live with them. I was laid out on a beach chair in a small bikini working on my tan when an older woman, around 40, approached me and my grandfather. She asked if there was a member of our family still in the hotel. He replied, "No, my wife is the only other person here with us, and she's in the pool." Her face turned white and replied, "I don't want to alarm you, but I've noticed a man in his underwear at his window taking pictures of her, and..." We both darted our heads to the rooms facing the pool to see what she meant, and to my horror, I saw a skinny, disheveled man with his camera documenting my unnerved face. I could make out the satisfied smile behind the camera and saw the rapid movements of his forearm. He noticed my grandma charging inside the hotel to find out where he was and to make sure that he was dealt with. He was gone before management could check every room in relevance to the guesstimate it provided. I still, even years later, am disturbed by the idea of what he did with the pictures of my just developing body. I wonder how dangerous he may have been. If he wasn't discovered by the stranger at the pool, would he have approached me? My other story takes place on Route 66. I can't remember the exact location due to it not being a semi-permanent location for us. We stopped at a truck stop in the desert to fill the tank and get snacks. It was about 1:45 a.m., and we had a couple more hours to go until we reached our hotel for the night. My grandfather was filling the truck and my grandmother was in the restroom when I was walking down the candy aisle looking for some on-the-road treats. I was then approached by a 60-year-old trucker who was holding the then-new Twilight DVD. He started rambling about how much he liked it and how it's very romantic and sexy, and how he thought it was a beautiful like Bella. He said he was going to buy it for me, but first needed help filling his truck up and asked me to come help him. I was young and naive and ultimately decided to follow him to his semi. He proceeded to largely grin, showing his smoke-stained teeth, and grabbed my wrists tightly to take me back to his truck. I began to feel bad vibes by how hard and eager and quickly he escorted me away from my family. Luckily, an employee there had been eyeing him the whole 2 hours he had been creeping around the truck stop and caught him dragging me away in around time to alert my grandma, whom she had seen me enter with. My grandma came running like hell with the employees who had alerted her, screaming that she was calling the police. The strange man proceeded to bolt the remaining 15 feet to his semi-truck and sped off. My grandmother had the management give her the license number from the security footage and reported the incident to the local police. After taking her statement and researching the license number and description, they told her how lucky she was to stop him in time because the truck driver was a listed sex offender. Also, it had been in the news that in the different states along Route 66 there had recently been 2 kidnappings. Several more incidents would occur during the remaining time spent on the road. Though less severe, I would be on many different occasions pursued by older men, some in the military, to be tricked into being alone with them even after telling them my age. Stories mentioned would actually save me from being lured away. Of course, I would rather be a carefree child, enjoying innocence and adventure, but in the long run, these creepy encounters would result in me being vigilant and sensitive to my surroundings. I recently took my first ever trip out of the country and went to Peru. The travel advisory for the area warns of possible terrorism and crime. During the trip, several Peruvians told me it wasn't safe for women to walk alone, that it wasn't safe to use a cell phone in a car with an open window because it could get snatched, that saying no to a robber could get killed, etc. The friend who invited me and myself spoke decent enough Spanish to get by, but someone speaking rapidly or switching from English to Spanish, like the man in this story, was difficult to understand. We got off the plane in Lima at around 1 a.m. and headed outside to find our Uber. My friend and I are very different people. She acts like she has real-life plot armor. I have PTSD and am hyper-vigilant and extremely cautious. When we stepped outside, a man started shouting at us in Spanish and aggressively gesturing to walk away from where we were standing. I don't know what she thought, but I thought maybe we were standing in the wrong area and he worked in the airport. I quickly changed my mind as he had nothing to suggest that and started snapping taxi at us when he heard us speak English. My friend explained in English and Spanish that we were waiting for our Uber. He walked away. My friend stopped paying attention, but I noticed he went to a group of men for a huddle. I could make out aggressive snatches of Uber, Uber, Berto. One of the men broke away dressed in sort of a suit and rapidly approached. For this conversation and the rest of our interaction, he smoked spatches of English mixed with rapid Spanish. He basically started ushering us to the parking area and offered to take my friend's bag. I started objecting, and she mentioned we were waiting for our Uber, and he insisted that it wasn't possible for Uber to come to the airport. He had to take us outside. For some reason, my friend rolled with that and let him take her bag and lock it in the trunk. I kept pointing out that didn't make sense and we shouldn't get in with him, but she went for it, and I wasn't about to be alone in a foreign airport parking lot at 1 a.m. with no phone signal. Me being me, I took down his license plate before I got in the car and recorded much of the conversation. He kept the pretense of taking us to the driver and then started imitating he knew our driver. eventually calling him by name, and my friend forgot she told him earlier and bought that. But then he basically said he was taking us for the Uber instead of Berto. And to the finer points of the broken conversation, he said he knew the address of our hostel, then insisted we tell him what it was. Asked for a fare of about $10, and he said he even took card. Then started saying he was with the airport and a taxi company. He kept repeating he was with the airport and flashed a paper at us and said his name was Angel. Angel proceeded to tell us how dangerous Lima was and we shouldn't be going there. We would be robbed, assaulted, etc. And he was especially aghast at what he called lady boys. Then Angel started insisting he be paid $50 in cash, which I protested and said it was different from what he claimed. My friend for some reason decided otherwise, and after explaining she didn't have cash, he zipped us to an ATM and demanded she get the money. It was past 1 a.m., dark, in an area that looked like a movie set for a high crime area. I had no signal and she barely had any. No one knew where we were or who we were with, and we didn't know if he was armed. I didn't want to get back into the car, but her suitcase was still in the trunk and we didn't have another ride. I'd heard stories about tourists in foreign countries being scammed in a similar way, and being met with violence if they said no, or even if they agreed. My panic was sky high. But she got the money, and he proceeded to drive us to our hostel, continuing his tirade about the dangers. We passed a young man on the stairwell who appeared to be wearing makeup, and the driver pointed and said something like, "See? Lady boy. Not safe." That was the only nearly comical part of the situation. He seemed very agitated about a man wearing makeup, whereas I was very concerned about being robbed or murdered. He pulled up to what he claimed was our hostel, and it looked deserted. Angel told us to just knock, and my friend asked if he'd wait to make sure we got in safe. He said okay, and we headed to the door, only to find it locked, dark, and not our hostel. Angel had already gotten back into his car and zipped away. So we were on the side of a dark street, having been clearly scammed, in an area he emphasized was extremely dangerous for us, with no signal and no way to ask for help. Our hostel ended up being nearby though, and we were able to walk to it and enter without any more issues. To the man who pretended to be our Uber driver, and told us we were in danger repeatedly, demanded more money after taking us away from the airport, then ditched us at a random building in the wee hours of the morning. Let's not meet again unless it involves your sketchy arse going to prison. I'm a long-haul truck driver. I see and deal with a lot of weird and scary stuff. I was traveling up US 93 in Nevada, headed to Portland, Oregon for a delivery. It was around 1:30, and I needed to stop and log my half-hour break. I found a wide spot and pulled off, did my logs up, and made myself a sandwich. While I was eating said sandwich, I noticed a vehicle pull up behind me. I did not get too concerned about it, but kept one eye on while I ate. Then it got strange. I noticed a figure in the headlight of the vehicle approach the back and driver's side of my trailer, stop, and looked like they were rubbing the back side of my trailer with their hand. Being suspicious, I got my pistol out of my lockbox back in my sleeper, cocked it and locked it, slid it behind my waistband, and proceeded to climb out. I walked about 10 feet back, kept my hand on the butt of my pistol, and flicked my flashlight on and aimed it at the person. It was a man who was weird looking in a dirty whitish trench coat, long straggly hair, and bald on top. He was rubbing something on the side of the trailer. I hollered at him to stop what he was doing. He looked up at me, smirked, and without turning his gaze off of me, starts walking toward me. I back my way to my door, keeping my hand on my pistol but not pulling it out. Did not feel my life was in danger at that time. Opened my door, climbed into the rig, shut the door and locked it. The dude walks up to my door, looks up at me, still smirking. I'm thinking, what? This dude is off his rockers. I'm thinking, my half-hour break is over and it's time to go. However, while I'm looking at him and getting ready to turn the key, I feel my truck rocking. I jump up and look in my driver's side mirror. Nothing. I look over to check my passenger mirror, and there, on my step, face pressed to my passenger window, is a freaky, perfect replica of an old witch, smiling, rotten teeth, cocking her head left, then right, fogging up my window. Needless to say, I about sucked my seat up in my ass. But that's not the end of it, oh no. The dude then jumps up to my right side step and proceeds to start licking my window. Then the witch lady starts smacking my window with the palm of her hand over and over. The dude starts telling me to open up. Hey boy, open up. Come on now, open up. We're friendly. What you got in this trailer of yours? Anything good? Open up, boy. Now I feel threatened. I pull out my pistol. The chick immediately disappears off my passenger side step. The dude laughs, jumps up and down on my step, then grins. Touches his finger to his nose, then jumps off my step. I fired my truck up and took the hell off. Never did see any headlights following me. Thank God. I'm a 52-year-old female, and I was traveling by car to an out-of-town job assignment. I had stopped at a popular and busy gas station to fill up the car, stretch my legs, use the restroom, and grab a snack. I was approached by a developmentally disabled woman who appeared to be in her mid-20s. She was looking for a ride to town a couple of towns over. Her ride had abandoned her while she was in the restroom. She was a little upset. She didn't have a cell phone and didn't know any phone numbers, so I could call someone for her. I checked with the employees at the store and they said that she had been there for an hour looking for a ride because she said her friends left her while she was in the restroom. I then made the decision to do something I've never done before. Offer a stranger a ride. I wasn't going to the town she wanted to go, but I was heading in that direction, and I told her I would drop her off at the grocery store in the next town where I would be turning off to go to my destination. The grocery store was always busy, and it was very likely she'd have an easier time getting a ride to where she wanted to go. Instead of 25 miles, and she'd have an easier time walking that distance if she had to. This was agreeable for her, and we set off. Right away, I noticed a van following us. I tried to lose the van, but it kept pace. Meanwhile, the woman wanted to play with my phone. I told her no, it wasn't a toy, it was for work and I moved it out of her reach. The van then speeds up and starts to get closer. The woman suddenly remembers her boyfriend's phone number and we need to call him. I can't use my phone while driving, and I was approaching the outskirts of the business district of the next town and no cell phone use while driving signs everywhere. I told her that we're almost to the grocery store. She becomes agitated and yells, "No, you have to take me home." I told you I can't do that. I'm not going there. It's in the opposite direction of where I need to go and I'm expected soon. We'll call him from the parking lot. She becomes more upset and frustrated. The van is getting closer. I pull into the grocery store parking lot. It's about 4 p.m. The store is busy. I pull up in front of the store and ask for her boyfriend's number. She can't remember his number. She won't get out of the car. She's arguing with me and the van is pulling into the parking lot. There is a sheriff's deputy parked nearby and I roll down my window and signal that I need to speak to him. He walks over to me and asks what's going on. I tell him where I met the woman and now she won't get out of the car, and under my breath I tell him the van has been following us. The deputy tells the woman, "She brought you where you asked her to. It's time for you to leave her car now." She slowly gets out of the car, and I ask once more for her boyfriend's number, and she says, "You're crazy. I don't have a boyfriend. Oh look, there are my friends now," and she points to that van. The deputy and I share a look, and he says, "Give me your contact info. I can delay them for about 20 minutes while I check their license and registration, and lecture them about abandoning a special needs adult. You get out of here and I'll check on you before my shift is over. And don't pick up any more hitchhikers." I left and went to my destination. He called me to make sure I got to where I was going and told me that they were keeping an eye on the van and its owner. He told me he also contacted a colleague at the sheriff's department in the county where I was working, and that she would contact me in a day or two. While I was on assignment there, I spoke to 2 deputies and a detective about the woman in the van. No one ever told me anything about them, but they were very interested in them. My nightmare is one day I'll turn on a true crime show and see a report about this woman and her gang robbing and killing people. Between August 2012 and June 2013, when I was 20 years old, my boyfriend Ryan was living abroad in Trieste, Italy, as a teacher. We're both from New England, and I was unfortunately stuck at home for my junior year of college. 10 months is a long time to be in a long-distance relationship, so for Christmas my parents told me I could go visit Ryan over his February holiday, which fell on his birthday and Valentine's Day. In short, it was perfect. When the time came, I sat at the airport and said a quick goodbye and happy birthday to Ryan via text message, as I knew that I wouldn't have service on the flight or at all in Europe. He wasn't able to meet me at the airport because of work, so he texted me directions about what to do when I landed in Trieste. The directions went something like this. When you land, go out to the buses. Get on the C bus and take it for about 45 minutes. At the end, you'll be at a tram station, and I'll meet you there. It wouldn't hurt to get a map or ask someone for directions if they speak English, but if you follow my directions, you should have no problem. This all seemed pretty straightforward to me, but as I was sitting on the bus, I couldn't help but feel I had done something wrong. You know how it is. When you're helpless, you always assume the worst. And I was pretty helpless in a foreign country with little knowledge of the language and no traveling companion. So naturally I was worried. I decided to try to communicate with the woman next to me, just to calm my nerves. "Scusi, inglese? Parle inglese?" She made a face and held up her fingers to show she spoke a little English. "Oh, grazie. I'm looking for the train station. Stazione treno? Dove?" I pulled out the map and I got at the airport and pointed to the train station on the map. She smiled immediately. Sì, vengo con me," which I'm pretty sure means come with me, and even if it doesn't, she seemed to know where I wanted to go, and after viewing the map, how could she not? About 15 or 20 minutes into the ride, the bus stops in a really sketchy-looking part of the city. The woman stood up and made a "come here" gesture with her hands. I looked around at the buildings outside and didn't see a train station anywhere. Ryan had been adamant that I wouldn't miss it, and I had only been on the train for half the time he said I would be. Alarm bells started going off in my head. This woman was being so insistent, yet she knew exactly where I wanted to go because I had shown her on the map, and this clearly wasn't it. She then grabbed my arm and tried to pull me out of my seat. I was not having any of this. I said, "No, no grazie, ciao, ciao," and waved her goodbye. She looked really irritated but seemed to give up. I heard her mutter something I couldn't understand in Italian, and that's when 5 dudes stood up from all different parts of the bus and got off with her. The 6 of them were clearly together, yet she had sat next to me and had not once talked to any of them over the course of the 20-minute bus ride. I was a little more than creeped out, but I made it to my stop without any further incident about half an hour later. I mentioned my experience to Ryan, and the two of us laughed it off jokingly that I could have ended up like the girl in Taken. I'm pretty sure I was just overreacting, but sometimes I really wonder. Italy is known for human trafficking. A huge ring was just busted in May of this year. I feel like lonely young foreign travelers are probably pretty easy prey for them. And luring a young girl in with a woman and then using men to strong-arm her just doesn't seem so far out of the realm of possibility. Bad people or not, it was pretty scary for me, and I'm glad I had enough sense to stay on the bus. Who knows where I'd be now? This whole story unfolded today. Cops were involved. I almost had a panic attack. It was a whole mess. So, I'm on a trip backpacking around Europe with my brother, currently in Paris. We're staying at this hostel and we're in a 10-bunk bedroom. There was this one guy in the room who was immediately super weird. Almost right away, like as soon as we got settled, he starts talking to us about flying to Libya. He's all, "Us, Libya, fly tomorrow." And my brother and I are just like, "Nah, dude." He keeps saying it. We keep saying no. And he's getting progressively more assertive about it. As me and my brother are going around doing sightseeing and stuff, I keep seeing this dude around. When we're at the hostel, he kept following us to the dining hall, out onto the terrace, and I'm getting more creeped out. My brother, ever the non-assertive soul he is, just laughs it off like the dude is joking. This goes on for 2 days. Well, this morning, we were going out to breakfast and I forgot my phone back in the room. So I told my brother to just go ahead and I ran back to get it. I go in the room and the dude is just sitting there. There's no one else in the room and I honestly contemplated just leaving it. But I didn't trust it alone in the room, so I planned to just grab it quickly. That morning, he was still on about Libya, and it was essentially bending over our beds going on about it, despite me repeatedly telling him to stop talking to us. I go in and grab my phone when he suddenly just yells, "Libya, now. We go now." I'm very scared, since at this point we are the only ones in the room, and I just say, "Shut up, dude." And I go to leave when he blocks the door and grabs my shoulder. Still going on about going to the airport and flying to Libya. I shove past him and run away to where my brother and I were going to breakfast. I decided that we were going to switch rooms because this dude was officially creep level 100. We made it back to the hostel, and before we talked to the front desk, we went outside for a smoke and he shows up. I almost yell at him to leave us alone and he flat out says no. I go to the front desk and explain that this dude has been harassing us and we wanted to change rooms. I mentioned what went down in the room, and before I knew it, the cops were called and I was giving a statement. As they were sorting it out, there was a couple of things that jumped out at me. This guy didn't pay in advance. Normally, when you're staying in a hostel, you pay the full amount up front, or if you're staying for a while, you pay weekly. He was paying by the day. He had several pieces of ID in his wallet, none of which matched his description. Apparently, Paris has been having a problem with human trafficking. This guy was escorted out of the hotel by police. He was banned from staying there ever again. Me and my brother switched rooms and we were given vouchers for free dinners for the rest of our stay here. And now, I'm terrified to go out by myself. I swear, if me and that guy had been alone in a more secluded place that didn't have cameras everywhere, I could have been shipped off to Libya. So this happened a couple of months ago, and I guess I could say this is a warning to everyone out there when taking public transportation when traveling, especially at night. I'm a 17-year-old female who lives in a small city in Malaysia. I usually travel to the big city to visit my boyfriend. Normally I take the train since there's more college students and families and it just feels safer in general. I only take the bus when there's absolutely no trains left. One time, my boyfriend's family invited me for a family event, so I accepted. I immediately went to book the train tickets only to find that all the trains for the entire week, morning to night, were all full. Next, I checked for afternoon buses, all of them full as well. The only buses with free seats were evening buses, which left around 5 p.m. So fine, I take those. On the day I had to leave, we go there around 5:25, but apparently the bus had left, so the staff gave us another seat for a 6:45 p.m. bus. No problem, it's not that late. We waited, and only by 7:30 the bus arrived. All I was thinking about is how dark it was going to be. I couldn't get a refund and change to another bus for the next day, so I had to stick with the 7:30 bus. I'll admit I was a bit scared, but I brushed it off as paranoia. So skip to 2 hours later when we're halfway to the destination. This is the part that made me refuse taking a late bus ever again. There was this guy who looked in his late 20s sitting in front of me. It was dark and I didn't dare to fall asleep, so I was on my phone chatting with my boyfriend the entire time. I felt someone watching me, and sure enough, I saw the guy's reflection in front of me staring directly at me. What's creepier is that his glare was not kind, and his eyes were quite large. It felt as if he was staring right into my soul. I just ignored him because honestly, he can go screw himself. Just as I thought it couldn't get worse, he started whispering to me. It started off with, "Hey. Hey, can I talk to you?" Now, I'm a paranoid person, so I don't talk to someone who just looks plain creepy. And he started saying things like, "Answer me. I just want to talk to you. Please, talk to me." I grew a bit annoyed, so I just plugged my earphones in and put up my hoodie. Then he had the guts to put his hand through the side of the seats, touch my stuff, and reach for my legs. As soon as I saw his hand, I gave it a good kick. Thankfully, he stopped after that, but the glaring continued. Out of fear, I called my mother and whispered to her everything, and she told me to tell someone about it or ask to switch the seats. I told the older man who was sitting next to me about it, and he got up and took over the seats. Then the creep, he actually pretended to sleep. Then the older man told the creep's friend, "Hey, make sure your friend there don't simply disturb other girls." The man then asked me if I knew my way around the bus station, if I had someone waiting for me there, etc. When I finally arrived, I immediately ran into my boyfriend's arms and swore to never take an evening bus again. This happened a few months ago, in the McDonald's at Copenhagen Station. I was visiting the country for a day, and since I wanted to travel cheap, I decided to take the cheapest bus there was, so just happened to be the one arriving at 11 p.m. The day before, I thought I could save even more money by not renting a bed somewhere and instead spending the night awake, or half asleep at the station. Do my business the next day, and sleep long and well on the bus back home. So this McDonald's is open 24/7. I pretty early discovered that the station was too cold for me to get some shut-eye, so I went inside and bought a coffee and sat down at an empty table. Plenty of lighting and semi-drunk people to keep me awake, I thought. I should add I'm 23 female. After some while of sitting in my spot, a strange guy walked over and placed a full cup of soda on my table. He said something in Danish, I believe, meant, "I ate my food already. I didn't drink any. You should have it instead." I'm Swedish, and although some Swedes understand Danish perfectly well, I have some difficulties doing this, so it was just a guess. Anyway, I didn't really pay much attention to the cup after it was put on my table. I just wrote it off as a random drunk trying to flirt. But I noticed that in front of me, a table away, sat another guy, and he was watching me closely, because we did lock eyes the times I looked up to peek at him. This creeped me out. I really don't like being watched like this, and he just sat there for nearly an hour, even though he had no food in front of him. In the end, this dude stood up and walked over to me, and I cursed internally, thinking I'd have to defend myself and tell him to leave. But he turned, and there stood the guy that had left the soda cup on my table. He told the soda guy to leave after pushing the soda cup back into his arms, and that he didn't want to see him anywhere near this place again. Then he turned around to me and explained in English that the soda guy had walked by my table several times, glancing at me and the cup and probably waiting for me to drink it. He said he'd finished his meal a while ago and just stayed to watch over me, but had to leave and reminded me to be careful. I hadn't even noticed the soda guy supposedly pacing by. I was too fixated on this other dude, who just happened to be the good guy watching over me. Who knows what was in that soda, and what would have happened should I have gotten really thirsty and drank some of it.